What happened that night, Jussie?
When I landed in Chicago, and Frank Gatson, who's like my uncle, and he's also my creative director, and he picked me up. And then we got back to the apartment. There was no food. And so I went out to Walgreens thinking that they were 24 hours and to have a smoke. Walgreens was closed. So I called him up and I said, hey, I'm gonna run to Subway, which was across the street, and I'm gonna get a salad. Do you want anything? I went to the Subway and got the order. During that time, I texted my manager thinking that he was still in Australia because he was on an Australian tour with one of his other clients. And I said, yo, call me when you can. He called me immediately. And while he was on the phone, I heard, as I was crossing the intersection, I heard Empire. And I don't answer to Empire. My name ain't Empire.
Chase, what do you got?
Let's just start with some linguistics here. He's using the word and 10 times, which is an average of every 5 seconds during this 55-second clip. Second, there is chronology here out of control. And when somebody says what happened, we typically start somewhere near the emotional event. When we hear chronological things that are not suggested specifically, when I ask a question, take me from the beginning, what'd you do when you landed, and tell me from there. That should be a major red flag. And one of the things that you can do, which is kind of crude, is ask the person to tell you the story from the end back to the beginning. And we rehearse things no matter how many times, just like when you've said the alphabet before, no matter how many times you've rehearsed it, 10, 20,000, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to struggle saying it in reverse. So doing something, even if it's kind of covert, to get them to start telling it in reverse is the best way to catch that kind of lie. But I want you to do something that's going to come up later in this video. I want you to watch his face when he says the word salad. Right when he says the word salad, I want you to watch the facial expression. I want you to think he is feeling smart and he's kind of feeling cool for choosing a salad. And this is going to come up later, and it's probably going to be a little bit scary. But another thing that we're seeing here is I heard, I saw, I heard, this kind of showing versus telling thing that he's doing, which we tend to hear when children tell stories. Like if a third grader is trying to lie about stealing cookies, or a child is, I heard, I saw, and we're going to see a lot of that. But the second time we hear I heard, the blink rate goes up into the high 70s. And he does his best to kind of fake this confused facial expression. And I think he's laughing because there's no emotion involved with the recall. So if there was a scared emotion or a fearful emotion, it's not there and it didn't happen. And he's chewing on these lips, most likely in body language and behavior profiling. That denotes or suggests that there's some need for reassurance or some uncertainty there, or this hesitation is probably due to a lack of affect from the interviewer. So he's looking for some kind of affect, some kind of reflection that she understands. And I think one of these things, when he's talking about and to go have a smoke, he's kind of asking, isn't that cute? Don't you think that's kind of cute that I did that? And you see that facial expression there. So remember that facial expression, because we're going to see that later during a time when it really shouldn't be cute at all. Scott, what do you think?
All right. Yeah, a lot of times I did like 4 videos on this when it first came out on somewhere else. So I'm gonna pull a Mark and sort of focus on the story from the dramatic part of it. I'll be doing Mark today with no British accent. So at the beginning of this, he's setting this up to be a play, the structure of a play or a story. So he's given every person their personality in the background as we go through. There's way too much detail before he gets to what happened. If somebody came in and robbed you or beat you up or jumped you, you don't start off with, well, here's what happened. I came in that night on the plane because my manager this and that. You say, man, I was going into my house or I was coming out and these guys jumped on me, these 2 big guys, and beat me to death. I started crying and there was a fight, and you tell exactly what happened. You don't lead up with all this information. But then the part where he says there's no food, that's where he's making sure as he sets up his story, he has to make sure that we know or that she knows there was no food, and that's why he's got to go out. So it's 2:00 in the morning. He's got to set up a reason for going outside. So there was no food in the house. So that's the first part of it in his little play here. And then he locks eyes with her to make sure that she's listening and make sure she gets all these details as he goes through. And he laughs, and you're right, Chase, about the part about where he's laughing about having a smoke. He's trying to be all cute with that. Like, I shouldn't be doing that. I know I shouldn't. So let's connect there. He's trying to connect with her at that point. Because I think maybe he got a little bit of not hostile, but I think she was a little bit off-puttish with him, because I think she knew out of the gate this was not going to go the way he was hoping it would go. So we're looking at good versus evil here. Now, what else? That's I could keep going. Okay, I will then. He's got everybody at this point. He's setting everybody up in their places. He's got the manager, because he's going to come back to him about the phone. You're going to see that in a little while. He's got these guys. They're going to be hollering at him in a minute and saying all this rude stuff. He's given everybody their own personality and their own backstory for this little play. When he says, I heard, we see him biting on he say, I heard, and that's an adapter there, because what's happening is he's like, well, here I go, man, I'm going in. This is it. Here we go. So he's firing himself up to go in. So he's a little bit nervous about that, because this is where he's going to start hardcore lying right to her face. So let's pay attention to his illustrators. The illustrators, when you talk at your brain, emphasizing specific words or phrases. So let's pay attention to that, because those come and go, and we'll notice when they're there and when they're not there, and what he does. Then he laughs about being called empire. Now, when you're around people, when you're around celebrities, and somebody says something about if they see you on some show, for example, somebody like that, he should know that you don't say, I don't go by empire, and ignore them. They know exactly what they're talking about. They don't know his name, but they recognize him when that would happen. So that's part of his thing too. Another thing, they recognize me. So that's part of the story there. I'll end it there and go to Mark. What do you got?
Yeah, so, well, not a lot other than to agree with everything that you've both said so far, but let me read out some other stuff other than the ands there, Chase. And I haven't got all of this, but I've got most of it, I think. When and like and then and so then, laughter, sniff, so and during that time and as. Well, already straight out of the gate, just because of that stuff around the detail, I'm already not in a good mood about this. Then let's go into what the detail is that he's giving. Well, uncles, creative directors, and I agree, Scott, he's setting up these characters and the geography around this so he can go to it later on, so he doesn't have to backtrack and go, so hang on, so why was the phone? Why were you on the phone? Why were you at the house? I don't get it. He's seeing us off at the pass around this, so he doesn't have to go back, but it doesn't make sense. And he's having to fill in between. So we got uncle, creative director, salads, no food, Walgreens, Subway, Australia's involved as well. I mean, just all kinds of stuff in there. It's details. And we're going to find out later on, he's devoid of a whole bunch of details. For somebody who is so detailed up front, later on in this, it's like, well, where's all your detail now? Why is it suddenly disappeared? We've got that lip retraction. We'll see a lot of top lip retraction. We'll see that bite to the side and bite to the front as well. That's going to show up regardless of what that is about. Lip retraction is always, something of concern. So concerned about something, anxiety about something there. But what I want to focus on very quickly here is later on in this, I feel he's actually going to be quite a good actor. There's going to be a later point here where I'm going to go, that's some really good acting. We've got a good actor here. Up front, he's showing the traits of terrible acting, because what a great actor does is go straight to the emotional heart of the moment, straight to the drama. They launch into the drama. Number one, what it means is suddenly it becomes very, very entertaining for a start, but also your audience kind of want it to stop because they'll get such a lot of empathy so quickly that they're like, okay, can we move out of this drama into something calmer? So it would be much better for him to hit the emotional core of this story and the pain, and then the interviewer might go, okay, well, let's not press this one any further. Here's what he does. He does what a bad actor always does, which avoids the drama, tries to move around it because they don't want to show themselves up as not being able to reproduce it really well, or actually that they find it too painful themselves to kind of reproduce it and they want to avoid it that way. Bad acting up front. Terrible storytelling in many ways up front, other than what you say there, Scott, in that he's laying out, his pieces quite well. So I'm very much concerned, moment one from this one. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're all on the same page. The and then jumped off the plate at me very early. There's an interesting thing. I always say the truth needs no support, but lies sure as hell love a crutch. And this guy's got all kinds of crutches in this one. As you listen to it, he does a solid 1 minute distancing from the question. She comes right out of the gate by saying, tell me what happened. And he even steps on her a little bit as she finishes, like he's got something to say, and then says absolutely nothing with regards to content in this first minute. He does some iterative storytelling with long vowels. Remember, we heard this with Eileen Wuornos around friends. In this case, food. He's asking for her to push back and give an opportunity. And when she says what happened that night, she's open with him. She has her chin up. We're going to see her body language change throughout this video, but she starts off very open with him. And then he does this whole thing to say, he starts wrapping himself. I think these characters are more than geography. He's wrapping himself in associates. Because if I'm traveling with the Pope, the Dalai Lama, and another good person, I couldn't have done anything wrong. That's a really good technique for people who are trying to get credibility. I call it credibility by association. So all these good people are on my side, and then he goes out and he starts talking a little bit, and she's starting to close her eyes a little bit and pay attention to him like, I'm not sure this sounds exactly right. He's rolling on and on. Then he tried that snicker around having the smoke, and he does hard eye contact when he does, just to see if she's connecting. She doesn't. Then he tries again at salad. He does a little smirk. He goes to that down internal voice, that over to the left, when he starts to say, I was on the phone, There's a pause. That pause means he's editing and adding something. All this stuff, to me, all these are props to his storytelling. And he still hasn't given her an answer at 1 minute in. Then finally he says, my name ain't Empire. That's another cutesy. He tries to connect, and he does. Look, when I was 14, I got my nose broke by being mugged. A guy hit me in the face with a Coke bottle. That's what I remember most about that whole incident. I don't remember, hey, I was talking to my friend and we were talking about this, or I remember the impact. And I remember, I was going to stand up for myself and got my ass whipped is what I remember. That's the way it goes. People don't, all that stuff goes out the window when this really happens. This is unbelievable from the beginning to me, but there we go.
What happened that night, Jussie?
When I landed in Chicago, and Frank Gatson, who's like my uncle, and he's also my creative director, and he picked me up. And then we got back to the apartment. There was no food. And so I went out to Walgreens thinking that they were 24 hours and to have a smoke. Walgreens was closed. So I called him up and I said, hey, I'm gonna run to Subway, which was across the street, and I'm gonna get a salad. Do you want anything? I went to the Subway and got the order. During that time, I texted my manager thinking that he was still in Australia because he was on an Australian tour with one of his other clients. And I said, yo, call me when you can. He called me immediately. And while he was on the phone, I heard, as I was crossing the intersection, I heard Empire. And I don't answer to Empire. My name ain't Empire.
Yeah, Chase, your dog peed on the tree. If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.